Okay, great. So what is Lehigh Valley Greenways? It is one of 8 conservation landscapes supported by the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. The Greenways partnership includes more than 25 organizations and municipal partners dedicated to the conservation of and connection to natural resources in the Lehigh Valley region. And so the 2021 applications are accepted for January 25th to March 19th, 2021. That is our year. I have to keep reminding myself. And we're going until 4 p.m. And so you've heard about this, and the purpose of the mini grant program is to implement ready-to-go single-year projects that protect and promote the natural resources of the Lehigh Valley, implement existing plans, and advance the goals of Lehigh Valley Greenways. This program is funded by the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and it's administered by the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor. And it is to inspire collaborative and strategic approaches to regional conservation and/or outdoor recreation opportunities, and to implement ready-to-go, as I said, ready-to-go single-year projects that protect and promote the natural resources of Lehigh Valley. Now, eligible applicants are municipalities, municipal agencies, nonprofit organizations, and educational institutions.
Kathleen, can I just note something there?
Absolutely.
It has for the nonprofits, just anyone that's in that nonprofit category. I wanted to stress that you do need to have both your 501c3 number and your PA Bureau of Charitable Organizations number. This is a requirement of the DCNR funding. So we have had in the past where there's nonprofits doing great work, but if you don't have both of those numbers, it is unfortunate that you would not be eligible. So please do make sure that you can answer yes to both of those, because then if you're awarded, those numbers would need to be provided. Thanks, Kathleen.
Okay, so the goals of Lehigh Valley Greenways are land conservation and restoration, outdoor recreation and trail connections, community revitalization, and local education and outreach. And if you would like me to go into further explanation of that, I can offline, or feel free to explore our website. So regarding the mini grant program, again, single year projects, and we're talking about spanning from June 2021, that's when the awards will be announced, to November 2022. So it's a little bit beyond single year. It must be located within Lehigh or Northampton County, or spanning both counties. It should advance Lehigh Valley Greenways vision and goals, and it should align with and help implement completed local, county, and regional plans. And here are some examples of those plans: the Walk Roll Lehigh Valley, County Livable Landscape Plans, LVPC Natural Resource Plan, Lehigh Valley's Inventory, Lehigh Valley Greenways Plan, Watershed Plans, Municipal Plans, Local Climate Action Plans. If you need access to those plans, I can get them to you, or they should be linked to our website. If they're not linked to our website, I will make sure that they're linked to our website.
Kathleen, I have one more addition there, sorry.
Sure.
So just about location. Within Lehigh or Northampton County, each year we do try to note, we border other mini grant programs for other conservation landscapes. And now over the last 2 years, We also have the Kittatinny Ridge Coalition, which is the newest conservation landscape, and it actually overlaps along the ridge with Lehigh Valley Greenways. So if you have a project, and we'll listen as we talk through some of the project application ideas you guys have towards the end of this meeting, like we normally do, we will listen and maybe give some advice if there are projects that are located either right along the borders of the Lehigh Valley and might also be eligible for one of the other mini grant programs, but also if you are in that Kittatinny Ridge corridor, the Kittatinny Ridge Coalition is going to be having their mini grant. Actually, I believe they're already open mini grant program, and sometimes the requirements or the priorities can be the same or different as ours. And so we can talk through that if people have projects in that area.
Thanks, Claire. Okay, so priorities for funding for 2021. Sorry, I'm losing my notes here. All right, so adopt model ordinances and or official map to protect natural resources and improve bicycle pedestrian connections. Implement ecological restoration projects such as riparian buffers, native grass, wildflower meadows, no-mow areas, stream habitat improvements, rain gardens. Host diversity, equity, and inclusion events, trainings, and workshops which involve advancing the goals of Lehigh Valley Greenways, improve the trail network of the Lehigh Valley, incorporate climate change adaptation strategies into relevant projects. Lehigh Valley Greenways grant guidelines. So we're a reimbursement funding program. The grant requests should be a minimum they must be a minimum of $1,000, and you round it down to the nearest $100 and don't exceed $10,000 in your request. If you have a project that's exceeding $10,000, either let us know or share it, or bring it up here so that we could alert. This is why we have Sherry and Lauren on the call, because they want to know about it, so that they can help you, because they have possibly access to funds that are beyond the capacity of Lehigh Valley Greenways. Okay, moving on. Applicant is limited to submitting 2 applications. All grants must be matched with cash and or eligible in-kind contributions at a minimum ratio of 1-to-1. Grant request is matched dollar for dollar. So, for every dollar we put in, you must match it for $1, either in cash or and help me out here, Claire, with
you can use in kind, and we'll go into that as well. But just to note, yes, it is a reimbursement grant. So even if you feel in your application that you're going to have enough grant and you put it in, and then you are the award is announced for the amount you received, if your final closeout is not able to document enough grant, we are only allowed to pay you up to the 50% we're only allowed to pay you for what you can provide match for. And we have had that happen, unfortunately, where projects, it's a good thing to come in under budget sometimes, but it also does mean that you need to make sure you have that match ready. So we will talk through the eligible match sources as well. And that leads right into that last bullet, that you cannot be matched to other DCNR funds, because this is the Lehigh Valley Greenways program and mini grants are a DCNR funded project. So you cannot match DCNR funds to other DCNR funds. And the one other thing I wanted to note on there is when it says applicants limited to submitting up to 2 applications. So if your organization is a larger one that does multiple different things, your organization as a whole is still limited to submitting 2 applications. And just let us know if you have a lot of ideas, we can talk through those and be able to help guide you on what might be the best fit for this grant program. And then there might be other grant programs that we would be able to suggest for other projects. So doesn't mean you shouldn't have lots of ideas, just means that we can only accept 2 applications from each applicant in this round. Okay, so we will talk through, so eligible reimbursement costs. And so this means that when you are reporting your final closeout, these are things that we can apply this DCNR Lehigh Valley Greenways funding source to. First of all, it always must be expenses that help perform the official scope of work as laid out in the grant agreement after the award, and they must be incurred during the grant agreement period. If you are working on a project right now and then looking to get more funding for it through this round, what you are doing now is not eligible both for reimbursement or for match. It would not be eligible until the start date of the agreements in, I said June, right? Kathleen, did you say June 1st for this round?
June 1st, yes.
So, so anything that you'd be planning to do for this project and use as either match or reimbursement costs would need to wait until June 1st in order to be eligible. So eligible cost categories, obviously the project materials, cash costs, things that you're going to have a receipt from a store or a vendor for that you paid, that the grantee paid. And we do ask that for closeout, you'll end up needing to provide that receipt or invoice and marking it, if it's not already marked, you know, depending on the type, date paid, and the amount that was paid at that time and payment method. So, which is normally a pretty easy thing to provide that documentation for. You can also be reimbursed for contracted or professional services. And so this would be anything that you brought in a consultant or contractor for. If you hired a landscaping company to help with some of the work, you would then be able to submit the costs of that as part of your reimbursement. Would need to provide the subcontract if there was one, and then the invoice and payments and documentation of the payments made to that contractor or professional service. And then in-house professional services. So this is the mini grantee, the organization's paid staff time. There are a few limitations on this, but overall, it is a reimbursement, eligible reimbursement cost. You would use the billable rate that is officially established by your organization. So that can include more than just that salary rate. It can include the fringe benefits and overhead costs, but that should be a billable rate that your organization sets. Yeah. If you don't have that, then it's best to document the hourly or the salary rate per hour for that individual. The cost, the reimbursement of this grant for in-house like staff time can only be up to 50% of the grant. So if you have applied and you want you need a $5,000 Lehigh Valley Greenways grant and you're matching it to another $5,000, so you have a $10,000 project, only $2,500, half of the Lehigh Valley Greenways money, can go towards paid staff time. And that limitation is simply to make sure that we are able to support across all the organizations, and also that we're making sure to have some of those other project materials and other expenses prioritized. So that in order to document those things, we do ask that you're providing, in order to get that reimbursement, the timesheets of those staff members and what they were accomplishing specifically towards this grant. So you will need to do a little bit more tracking than I know some of us, have just our general timesheets, hours worked for the day. You do need to break it out to what time was spent on this grant scope in order for that reimbursement. Kathleen, you can go to the next one if you don't mind, and we'll just add on to that with match. So again, match, the same thing, needs to be a part of the official scope of work and be incurred during that grant agreement period. You can include in the match any other, we elaborated on cash costs in the last one. If there are more cash costs that you're paying with a different source, those can be eligible match. Additional contracted services beyond the amount for the LVG grant, and additional staff time can be documented beyond what was paid in the eligible grant costs. On top of that, things that are additional for match, donated professional services that if you had, I'll stick with like a landscape designer or type of line of thought. If they provided work for you at no cost and donated their services within their professional realm, then you can use that time as match for your project. And it simply requires a letter from them documenting the number of hours and their value of the service that they provided. This is, again, one that you did not pay. It was not a contracted service. And it also needs to be within their professional service. If you have a landscape designer, or if you have a lawyer come plant trees for you for your riparian buffer project, they're not donating professional services. They would actually fall under the volunteer services because it's not within their professional realm. Equipment use, if you're using municipal equipment or the like, you can document that as an eligible match cost. And then volunteer services, like I touched on before, these would be, and there's two different rates. For under 18, you're using the PA minimum wage rate, the current at the time, and then over 18, use the independent sector value of a volunteer hour, which I believe right now, 2020 Pennsylvania one is like $26 an hour. So volunteer time can be a very valuable resource, and we love to see that volunteers are helping all of you with your projects. So please do document what volunteer time you have and use that as match. We will answer questions about all the match as well towards the end, but those are the different categories for eligible match.
Okay, so as to the online application, if you've gone on to the Lehigh Valley Greenways website, lvgreenways.org, if you go to the left hand of your screen, you'll see a drop-down menu. You'll find mini grants. You'll see where you could apply. I urge you, if you look at step 2, if you see the first red, hopefully no one's colorblind here. If you see the first red section, it says Word document with questions. I urge you to download this and fill in your answers here and save it somewhere prior to just filling it in online. There are always problems. And if you lose it, or even if you sometimes hit the save button, at the very end of the application, it says save, and it'll send you an email. Some browsers, it works. Some browsers, it doesn't work. If you have a Word document and you fill in your application here, you will always have it. And plus you'll have a copy for yourself. So I strenuously urge you to avail yourself of this. Regardless, you will need to fill out the mini grant budget table form and upload it. And here is the application. And so the application questions are, as you can see, project title, project description, short scope of work, and we'll go over that. Project timeline, we're going to go over that. Project alignment with 2021 mini grant priorities, project alignment with Lehigh Valley Greenways vision and goals. Is it consistent with local, county, and/or regional plans? We're going to go over that. Is your project collaborative? Opportunities for green and sustainable best management practices, and incorporation of climate change adaptation strategies.
Kathleen, can I talk to the collaboration just briefly?
Yes.
You can all see there that we're asking for especially letters from partners committing match. If you have partners that are providing match for your project, it is required that you have commitment letters demonstrating that from them. So please do ask them for a simple letter on their letterhead documenting what they're providing as match. And then if you have, we're not looking for tons of support letters. You don't need to go and ask the general community or be looking to collect a ton, but focus on stakeholders for your project. If there is a landowner that isn't committing match, but obviously wants to support this project, we would like to definitely want to see that the landowner is in support of the project, ask them for a support letter, or groups that will be either helping you with the project or be using the plan or the implementation project afterwards. If there's a school that is going to be coming to that location for field trips and that's why it's being done, or something along those lines, those are the key collaboration we want to see, partners that are involved in the exact project or will be using it afterwards. And those really do help build your case for the impact this project can have. Thank you.
Also, let me add to that, if you're doing a project on someone else's property, make sure you have a support letter showing that they want you to do that project on their property. We have seen applications where projects have been proposed on someone else's property, and yet that landowner wasn't necessarily aware of it or hadn't provided a letter of support. So we don't really feel like we were allowed to give that a green light without that kind of support.
Claire and Rob, I breezed past this slide, and we're going to go over some of this. Is there anything you want to add to this or this right now?
I don't think so. These slides will be provided. So those links at the bottom are very useful links, and I believe they're also in the guidelines for the grant document on the website. I would encourage everybody to go to the DCNR's 5 green principles and their climate change adaptation and mitigation plan to look for how your project might relate. They will help you to answer that question. Even if it is an education project or something, I don't think we've seen projects that we felt couldn't come up with relation to how they're helping either educate or implement these types of practices. So I do encourage you not to just rule it out and leave it blank, because it will be of detriment to your application.
And just to let everyone know, I will have a PDF of this presentation that I'll I'll share with everyone after the presentation. Okay, so examples of the scope of work, which is, I believe, question number 3. Okay, the scope of work. This is really important. We keep using this over and over again throughout the entire length of your project, from application until project closeout. So I'll just go over the very first example. The scope of work includes professional services for Nazareth School Riparian Buffer Phase 1 to establish a warm season grass and herbaceous riparian buffer along approximately 750 feet of the Shoeneck Creek. This project will convert currently mowed turf grass stream banks to native vegetation in an effort to filter runoff and stabilize an eroding bank. This is a very concise way of just summing up exactly what is going to be done and what's going to happen, what's going to be accomplished. Claire, do you have anything?
Sure. So this, when we're asking for the scope of work, again, like Kathleen said, concise. This isn't the question where you're elaborating the who, what, when, where, why. This is the very specific, exactly what the project is. The title that you used in the beginning should, and you'll see, like for some of these, we either gave it a year or we said phase 1, because if we've had 4 riparian buffers along the Bushkill Creek, when you're looking at a long list of mini grants, we like to say, okay, well, there's the Bushkill Stream Riparian Buffer at this trailhead. There's the Bushkill Stream Riparian Buffer at this location, or the different years or phases. So we encourage you to put in a very straightforward, the scope of work includes professional services is normally a pretty good summary, because what you're doing are professional services, the title of the project, and then a sentence or two that sums up. And we really like some of these that give, okay, this is the length, or this is the number of signs you'll see in this one, or things like that, that will help, because this is essentially the description that would go into your grant agreement if your project is awarded. These, I would encourage you to refer to some of these examples if you're not familiar with writing a shorter scope of work.
Example for timeline, and this is, again, every application asks for a timeline. This is one project going down here. So this goes from the beginning to the end of the project, and it shows, so this is a past awarded completed project. Color of Nature, we're really proud of this project, and it shows exactly. So it's not showing the days, it's showing the months, it's showing the spans. So in May 2018, the staff from Community Bike Works and Lehigh Gap Nature Center will plan for 3 or more. So specifically what they're going to do, they'll plan for 3 or more bike rides guided by Color of Nature leaders. Staff will decide on the location of rides, specific education elements, which could include plan, species identification, and watershed conservation. Then from June to August, leaders of Color of Nature and Community Bike Works staff and volunteers will lead guided nature bike rides. So what they're going to do during this timeline, during these months. Then from August to September, with support from Color of Nature leaders, Community Bike Works. So who's responsible will host a trail work day or possibly days on the Keck Park Trail. Between, go ahead.
That's okay. It's mostly just that we've had applicants that will say, well, it's going to happen between June and November, June 2021 to November 2022. And we're asking you to break that down a little bit more than that into these monthly or something like that. Which season are you planting in? Give us a general sense that you've thought through how to fit this project within the 1.5-year timeline that our grant is eligible for, rather than just saying it'll happen between that 18-month period. And if you have questions on that one or how to break it down, maybe you're not sure yet, feel free to ask. But this is a really good example of how they looked at this is the stages of the project.
Yeah, they broke it down into 5 stages here. So they really thought it through. And assigned specific duties and what was going to happen. Anything else, Claire or Rob?
That's good.
Sherry or Lauren, if you have anything, from your good guidance you want to chime in on, please do. Okay, so working with plans. Claire, do you want to?
Sure, I can cover this one.
Thank
you. It's really important that so one of the overarching goals for Lehigh Valley Greenways is to help get existing plans implemented. And the plans can come from the Regional Planning Commission, Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. They might be one from a county, a municipality like Kathleen said earlier, or a watershed plan, climate action plan for one of the cities, things like that. So what we're asking when you list those plans is some recognition of what part of the plan is deeming your project helping to implement. So while yes, you could just list, okay, there's Walk Roll LV, there's Lehigh County Livable Landscape Plan, and there's the Jordan Creek Greenway plan. But that's not telling us that what part of the plan that your project is helping with. So in order to score well for this question, we're asking you to identify the plan and author and year, and then a short description of how your project relates to what the recommendations of that plan are. And these are two examples of ways to describe it that would really well answer that question. So, and we're not, the one other clarification I'll make is we're not looking for the state and like state or larger plans on this question. We are looking for something from a regional perspective or county or even smaller at the municipal level that addresses your project. Thanks, Kathleen.
Oops. Yeah, budget. Okay.
Kathleen, before you go to that, if I could just add from the county perspective, if you are looking to match to the County Livable Landscapes program in Northampton County, that section that you were just on, the example of listing the plans, is very important for us because one of our requirements is identifying the specific action goals that are in our Livable Landscapes plan. And I think it's very important because you're essentially doing it for this application and you would do the same in our application as well. But that helps to support our funding efforts of how we continue to get support, just like you do with Lehigh Valley Greenways funding. So it's helping us all with our ranking process to help weed out the projects and what we can fund. But it's also more than that. It goes back to the funding levels of what we get commitments for each year. And I do say, I will agree, having the phasing and the specific identification also helps us in all of our applications, because if it is a multi-phase project, it really helps it to be very clear and distinct on which phase and location it is. So when you come in for a future phase, it's not questioned as, wait a minute, didn't we already fund this piece? So that's very important as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry. Okay, the application budget. So I wish I had a pointer here, or maybe I could, but I'm not.
We can see your mouse.
Okay, great. Okay, so the grant match is not to exceed 50% of the total budget. I realize that this is impossibly small. I can't read it, but the budget document that you have on the application is what you will get this form. I know in my very short time here with Lehigh Valley Greenways that I've already seen problems on this particular form. So this section here is what you want to put in is where you expect and help me out, Claire. I mean, I'm
Sure.
even losing my train of thought. This is where you're requesting your information. You're requesting that Lehigh Valley Greenways to provide you here. And
down at the bottom is actually the grant expenses, how you're going to use the grant.
Okay.
So
why don't you explain this here?
That's okay. So the bottom section, actually, that below that second green line is where you're listing any of those things that you're applying for the grant. So
thank you.
If we have examples in there, if you are doing a signage project, the example lists The signs, the cost of the signs would be one expense, and it has the second line, you know, here's this many signs at approximately this cost, and that gives us the cost we expect for the signs. Staff time, and having in there staff time for sign design related to this scope of work, and that you estimate 3 hours at this cost per hour, and that would be an expense. And then that will sum to give you your total grant request. It does ask you if your hourly rates and your sign costs add up and you end up with a number like $2,456.10, it is going to ask you just round down to the nearest 100, because I'm sure you can all understand that doling out mini grants down to 10 cents is not going to be the easiest way for any of us to manage this funding source. So round it down to the nearest 100, and that would mean that then right beside the red line there at the towards the bottom is the total grant request. Now, in addition to what you're requesting the grant funding for, the top section is where you're listing out the different other costs. You're going to list additional staff time that you expect to need. That's where you can put in, like the second gray line might be Scout Troop 473 is the gray line, because they are providing volunteer time, and you have a volunteer day planned for this project. Then you're going to list scouts planting trees or something like that, or installing these signs, and your estimate of hours. We understand you won't know how many hours it'll take, but give an estimate. And so that's one other organization. Then we would expect to see that Scout Troop providing a commitment letter, like we talked about earlier, a match commitment letter, and demonstrating that they have this planned and they expect to be contributing that volunteer match. So it is broken into what you expect to use the actual grant funds for from Lehigh Valley Greenways, and then the additional expenses, anything else that's going in there as match, and gives you the opportunity in those multiple gray lines towards the top to list if there's other sources, other funders, like other commitments from, like I said, a Scout Troop, or if you're working with, I think of an example where Lehigh County was helping a partner by doing the equipment work. And so Lehigh County provided a letter that said, we will be doing this many hours, estimate this many hours of staff time, and this cost of equipment because of our backhoe being used for this many hours. And so they were one of the gray lines, Lehigh County, and under it described staff time for 2 lines and equipment use for 2 lines. So hopefully
yeah,
you guys more, but when you have the document in front of you, it's easy to reach out when you've started to fill it in and thought of your project. Yeah.
So if your entire project costs $5,000, and that means you will request from us probably $2,500, and so $5,000 would be here in the total project line in the yellow. $2,500 would be here in this bottom half, and another $2,500 would sum up here in this top 2/3.
Correct.
So,
and it is set up with formulas to sum your cash match and your in-kind match in order to give, and the grant request in order to give totals. But if there are problems, we always know there's room for improvement. So we try to pay attention when grantees are applying. If there's issues that we're seeing come up a lot, we've made a lot of improvements over the last few years, I think, but and there's always room for improvement on that. So make sure that you have letters of commitment from any of the other match contributors, though. If they're documented on this form, then there must be a letter of commitment attached to your application.
Yeah, that's one of the big stumbling blocks when we're reviewing, is oftentimes we'll see a project that we want to fund, but it states somewhere that here's some matching funds, but it's pending. So we don't really know if you have it or not to actually match. So please make sure you get that commitment, and that when you are applying, that the money is committed, the match is committed.
Okay, and if you have trouble filling this out, I won't flub it in the future. Just contact me via email or phone. All right, so submitting the application online. I think this is self-explanatory. You'll receive an email acknowledgement of the application. If you don't, contact me for anything along the line. If you especially with technology issues or problems or hesitations, just contact me, please. I'd rather you did than panic. So.
Kathleen, you'll be, the way it works with that application is it'll come into you and have a nice summary of the whole application in your email, and you'll be able to forward that full application and say, hey, thank you, we've received your application. Here's a copy of it. So that's why it notes that the email acknowledgement won't be immediate. Now, if it's a work day, you're probably going to get it within an hour of submitting, but if you're submitting something over the weekend or on the evenings or something, you might not get it until Kathleen's back in the office.
Yeah, I do turn off my emails on the weekends, so just be aware.
As she should. As she should, and everyone else should.
Here's a big important thing, pay attention to. We follow the Commonwealth's kind of guidance on this. The applications are due 4 p.m. on Friday, March 19th. So even if you have started an application in that time frame, if you don't hit the submit button by 4 p.m. on Friday, March 19th, we won't consider it. So please, I urge you to get it in by then.
The website actually turns off at 4 p.m. So it's not that we won't consider it, it will not work. The submit button will no longer work after 4 o'clock.
Okay, and then on in May, and so after that we'll go through our review process. In May, we'll make the award announcement sometime in May. I'm not committing us to an actual day or time. In June, the awards will begin, and in November 2020, that's when all grants will end. So June 1st, the awards begin. All right, so how can I answer your questions? Oh, wait, application scoring. Sorry, we got a lot to go, a few to go. Application, go ahead. Okay, application scoring. 10 points for the completeness of the application. There's how well the plans, the timeline to begin and end during the grant period, 5 points. Aligns with, 2021 priorities, not 2020 priorities, 2021 priorities, 5 points. Supports Lehigh Valley Greenways vision and goals, another 5 points. Implements actions listed in existing local plans, 5 points. Identifies and secures required match, 5 points. Promotes partner collaboration, 5 points. We really love partner collaboration here. Includes the use of best management practices, 5 points. 5 points for new applicant or past applicant meeting all deadlines in the last 3 years. If you were, if you had applied in the past 3 rounds, you'll lose a point for each grant not closed by deadline for paperwork if you applied in the last 3 rounds. And again, I'll get this out to you, so you'll have that. After the award announcements, agreements are sent, I just went over all the timeline with you. Before we close out your grant, we require you to submit a success story, which you can see over on the right side of your screen. This is really important for us to help promote your story and to laud the success. And you'll see these on our website. Once the agreement in June 1st, we'll send out an agreement. You need to sign this so we can get your agreement going. There's 2 reimbursement requests or 1 lump sum at the completion. Okay, I went over this. We also like photos. We need photos for the website. There's website resources at Lehigh Valley Greenways, which will soon be updated with 2020 updates. So please check that out and continue to check that out before March 19th. Anything else, Claire, you would like to add, or Rob?
No, I think, thank